While officials say Dr. Spencer did everything he was supposed to do during his self-monitoring, House Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee Chairman Tim Murphy of Pennsylvania tonight is again urging the CDC and President Obama to follow his recommendation for a mandatory 21-day quarantine period for healthcare workers who have had direct exposure to patients when those doctors come home. Congressman Jason Chaffetz is on the House Oversight and Homeland Security Committees. He joins me now tonight. Thank you for being up late with us, sir. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Congressman Murphy is absolutely right. We can't mess around with this. I'd actually think that it might need to be longer, closer to 42 days. When you have somebody who had direct contact with Ebola patients, people who are already infected, you're going to have to go into a quarantine. And I'm not buying this self-quarantine when you can go out bowling and doing all your normal activities. That isn't working. Even the smartest of the healthcare professionals are making these types of mistakes, and they're putting others in harm's way unnecessarily.
It's not even self-quarantine. Maybe we'd feel better if it were self-quarantine. It's just self-monitoring. That's it. Just take your temperature twice a day. And the officials in New York here tonight were saying he took his temperature twice a day. He didn't have a fever last night. This wasn't until this morning that he was symptomatic, and he did the right thing. He called officials immediately. He went in, and they had the hazmats and so on. They think the system worked.
No, it didn't. It didn't work. We heard testimony in Dallas in a field hearing that we had from a CDC doctor who told us if you have a suspect that might have Ebola, you're to get tested. Then you need to get tested 72 hours later because it doesn't always show up in the first test. And so there are so many mixed messages. We're going to hear testimony tomorrow morning. Chairman Issa has called a hearing. We have the Inspector General who is coming in and saying we're woefully underprepared for protective gear. For instance, hand sanitizer in the greater Washington, D.C. area for dealing with a pandemic. About 80% of it is expired, and they only had about 5,000 units. So
now they're suggesting
too
that this plane that he was on has been taken out of commission. But what about the subways? I mean, I realize that this is like a 1 in a million chance. That's what they seem to be suggesting. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. But he rode the A train, he rode the L train, he rode the #1 train, he rode in an Uber cab, he went bowling in Williamsburg, he visited the High Line, a very popular tourist destination here. He sat at a restaurant and ate, and who knows whether he used the bathroom facilities at any of these places. And we know that, you know, bodily fluids that's what Ebola is all about. I mean, these are all things that people are now concerned about here in New York.
We got to be calm, cool, and collective. Odds are nobody, you're not going to get it. But at the same time, this person went running and went on a 3-mile jog is one of the reports I heard. And it is transferred by sweat that can be left. And actually, you can be contagious for several hours in that sweat. And so, again, this is a doctor who's got the biggest heart in the world. Don't you love a person who goes to Africa to go fight Ebola and courageous? But at the same time, for the public good, you're going to have to get more stringent. There should be a travel ban. If you have come in contact, you're going to have to go into mandatory quarantine.
Right.
I don't think we can mess around with this anymore, Megan.
What's so wrong with that? What's so wrong with that? The price that you pay for doing such a good deed is a 3-week stint on your own when you come back for self-reflection. I realize there are financial issues as well. Perhaps a medical facility will be willing to help with those in order to encourage this sort of work. But this, I mean, you can see the scare, like with people running around. It's not that they tell us on the one hand you have nothing to worry about, nothing to worry about. Then they tell us they're doing contact tracing on all the people who were on the airplane and all the people with whom he may have been in contact. And the 4 people he was in close contact with are in quarantine. And they tracked down the cab driver. And they don't think he's in danger, but they felt concerned enough that they had to find. I mean, the average person doesn't really understand all the nuances. In any event, I got to leave it at that. Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks, Megan.
We're going to